You are live. By you are live, it must mean we are live. Yes. Welcome everyone. This is Andres Restart. Oh, that's a new Restart. This is Andres Restart, and I'm joined by my friend Brandon. And we're going to be talking about Nintendo as we usually do on Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. And there isn't really much to the set of topics tonight. It's going to basically kind of be talking about the big sort of news, singular topic here. But as the night will go on, I'm sure in the chat, different things will come up and we'll be talking about that. Basically, you know, just a Nintendo-focused discussion as a whole. But yes, basically, the Nintendo Direct date seemingly has been leaked. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about it being later than anticipated by most, including ourselves, although it's not entirely left field. We've been talking about ever since E3 was officially canceled that because E3 is canceled, there's a chance that Nintendo might sort of wait a little bit. And that's what it seems like is sort of happening here. But we're going to be diving into that very shortly. First, I just want to kind of make sure that everything is looking and sounding okay. So guys in the chat, please let me know if everything is looking and sounding okay. From my end, everything looks fine. Brandon, from your end, everything seems fine, I'm assuming?
Yeah, everything
seems fine. You can hear me?
I can, yes.
You can hear me. So, hello there, Joycey J. Dr. Woolstar, hello. Super Chris, DE Fox, thank you for modding, guys. Hello there, Zonai Theorist. How are you? Having Hope 5, what is going on? Onyx, hello. Sunny Shields, good day. Paint Fat Purple, hello there.
Hello there.
JR Tolkien, what are you saying here? Every time someone mentions a direct, Nintendo delays it an hour for the love of everything. Good. Stop. If that was actually the case, we wouldn't be seeing a direct in our lifetimes, because if you watch any of my videos, I say Nintendo Direct like 50 times.
Would occur before the next Nintendo Direct.
Yeah. So, maybe it's not an hour they're delaying it by. Maybe they delay it by like a microsecond or something. But yeah. Jay and Having Hope 5 are saying everything sounds good. Awesome. Thank you for letting me know that. Guys in the chat, please leave a like. Really helps things out. Like, for real. I see 4 people are currently watching. We're at 13 likes. If we get that number up, that'd be amazing. It really helps out the show. It'll share out the show more through the whole YouTube algorithms, and more people will see it. So, yeah. But, let's see here. Giancarlo's adding me. Two suspect that Nintendo marked the Nintendo Direct in the day when they have its latest shareholder meeting. So I did see that. I did see that Nintendo is having a shareholder meeting on the 29th as well.
Oh.
So right now I'm kind of waiting for people to kind of flow in, because we just started the stream, before I really dive into the meat and potatoes of this topic. That way most people can hear what I have to say on it. Yeah, we'll be getting to that. But I do understand your point about the shareholders meeting. What I'm kind of curious about is the dates of previous shareholder meetings and when Nintendo has hosted a direct. Like, what has been the window between them?
I'm pretty sure I remember some of them being very close, but I don't know if there's ever been one that was on the same day. I kind of feel like there have been at least big announcements on the days of shareholder meetings, occasionally, not very often, but occasionally. But I'm not sure if there's been a full-blown direct on the same day. Maybe in the same week, though.
Yeah, I kind of want to look for... Alright, so the 82nd Annual General Meeting of Shareholders is on June 29th at 10 a.m. Japan time. Let's see. Let me look up the 81st Annual Nintendo Shareholder Meeting and when that happened. Of course, Google just tells me, you know, not that. So I'm seeing here the 81st Annual General Meeting of Shareholders. I'm seeing a date that was also June 29th at 2021.
Right. So obviously, like E3.
And then last year, E3 happened on June 15th, if I don't remember correctly.
But they have shareholders meetings.
Yeah.
Like every quarter.
Yeah.
So it's very possible other directs have been closer.
True. Yeah. Now I'm looking. Well, we didn't have a direct in 2020. Right now, I'm just looking at like the annual ones.
No.
I wish there was like a website to just tell me every date. There might be. I could just go to Nintendo's website, but it didn't seem like organized in that way to tell me.
They're probably on the same day every year, or very close. So you could probably look up like each quarter when it is.
Alright, so I'm now taking a look at the 79th meeting. It was June 27th. So they pretty much host at the end of every June, which makes sense. Yeah, like consistently at the end of every June.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, I feel like the fiscal, like the different, the quarterly reports, I think they probably also happen around the same time as well.
Yeah, like they're around the same time every year. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you just look up each quarter, or you go back the past 4 quarters, you should get a relative idea within a few days.
Yeah.
But then we have to go through the direct list and look for dates that are within like 1 or 2 days, maybe 3 days of whatever we find.
Yeah.
And then we'll have the knowledge. Or we could ask maybe someone in the chat, help us with this, please.
Yeah, if anyone knows where what all the dates are, because I want to kind of look it up, but I don't want to I should be talking right now, not just deep in there.
Intense research.
So we had I guess what's interesting, right, is that they usually happen around the same times every year. So let's just look at the Nintendo Direct archive real quick, because how much fluctuation is there between directs year by year? I think they kind of are pretty close to each other. So, for example, this year we had the February Nintendo Direct, February 9th. Okay, so we go back to the year prior.
I think the year prior was like later into the month. I could be thinking about the Pokemon Direct though.
Well, yeah, the Pokemon presentation happened
because they
towards
were
the end as well.
Like a week apart before.
All right, so the one for 2021 was only off by about a week. It was the February 17th. Okay.
Yeah.
And then also comparing the September Direct, right? The September Direct. Well, the thing is, we haven't gone to September.
We always
yet.
know it's in September, but we don't always know when.
Yeah. Well, the September Direct of 2019
the early
was September 4th.
Is a little bit.
The September Direct.
Because sometimes it's in January.
So the difference, if we look at 2019 versus 2021 for September Directs, it's the 23rd versus the 4th. The 4th. So that's a big difference. It's almost 3 weeks. So,
The shareholders meeting was on the 4th? Or the other way around?
No, just the directs. But let's take a look at that, right? So that would be the first quarterly report, right, of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Correct. All right. So what we would be looking at.
But that would be in. Because that'd be the ending quarter. It would be in March.
Right. Well, what I'm trying to look at is the first quarterly report, which would be close to that September Direct date. Understand?
Oh, you're talking about September.
Because we're getting the annual. Wouldn't that be the end? Or am I mistaken?
No, because
separate.
their fiscal year ends in March. So for them, wouldn't the final quarter be in March?
Yes. So, right. But the annual one happens in June.
Right. But June is the first one. Because March is the last one.
So the second quarterly report.
Yeah.
Okay. Second Nintendo quarterly report. 2021. Let's see what the date was. Hopefully it just pops up and Google's not September 30th.
Annoying. September 30th?
Well, that's when the earnings ended. When was the meeting? Okay, well, I have a little bit of an archive here. Okay, so going back to 2021, the 6-month earnings release happened September 30th. The meeting, the end of the second quarter, yeah, it all happened on November 4th. So that's a little bit afterwards. Okay.
A little bit. Yeah. A month. Over a month.
In June 20, yeah. I don't know. It's tough because, like, how much does it? The other question is, how much does it really matter? So, like, does there need to be a certain window between when an information comes out during a fiscal report from Nintendo versus what they're announcing publicly?
I would say that they should definitely do the direct before they have the meeting, because they will just have a lot more information for their shareholders out publicly, so they can actually talk about stuff. Because why go into a meeting with all your cards close to your chest and you can't say anything or give any confidence to your shareholders because you can't talk about anything yet? So I definitely think they should have the direct before the 29th, if not on the 29th.
Right, but this is
before the
29th,
meeting.
29th in Japan, right? So
Yeah,
there's a bit of time zone magic going on there.
Then that would be the 28th.
Are they 12? They're 12 hours ahead of us, right? Approximately. I know you and I are slightly different time zones. So
maybe
EST versus.
I think it's 13 hours for me.
All right, so okay. 8. Yeah, so they're ahead, right? So June 29th for them would be June 28th for us for a little while.
Right.
Okay.
And they're saying
so if they have if they're going to have their meeting on the 29th in the morning, that would mean that on the 28th we'd be hearing about it like at night.
Right.
Okay. So if the Nintendo Direct is on the 29th, then that would be weird because, I mean, we'll just take a look at our calendar. I believe that falls on a Wednesday, right? So June 29th is a Wednesday, our time, right? The Direct wouldn't happen right at 9 a.m. probably. I mean, it could happen right at the same time. They could happen right at the same time. But historically, we see the E3 Direct on a Tuesday. Problem is, there is no E3, right? If things were following the historical pattern, it would have been happening tomorrow. But it's not, supposedly.
But the 28th is a Tuesday, so...
Yeah, I mean, they could literally hold their E3 plan just 2 weeks later, right? And kind of keep that schedule. That's possible. But I guess I'm still not entirely certain how much it matters that their Direct happens, like in terms of the timing. Like, how much does that really matter? It might be a little confusing because there'll be a whole bunch of information to sift through, right? There'll be all the Direct stuff, potentially Treehouse stuff, potentially interviews from different developers related to games that are being talked about during that time. And then there's also the fiscal earnings report, and then there's the translations that come from that. So, like, there's a lot that could all happen around the same time, and normally we have a bit of a separation there. So, you know, I mean, Nintendo's not going to change when they're going to have their fiscal. Like, it's going to happen at a certain time, and that's it. Right? No. Now, can the Direct, like, so again, I just don't know. I'm not going to act like I do. And I have a sneaking suspicion that most people don't really know what really matters in terms of when a Direct happens in relation to their fiscal reports. I feel like it doesn't matter that much. That's maybe I'm wrong there, right? But my thinking is...
I do feel like it would matter just in terms of it happening beforehand, like I was talking about before. I do think it should happen beforehand. I do think that impacts the meeting itself.
Just in terms of things they can mention?
Yeah. There's the things they can talk about. Like they can be like, okay, what are your? Because right now, like, they have to. Obviously, they need to show like what their shareholders. Not necessarily. Obviously, they don't need specifics because the shareholders don't care. They just need to know that they have announcements and like specific release dates.
Right. Well,
and, like, the games are coming.
The thing is, then there are times the tone says, "Hey, look, we have games planned. Don't worry about it." They do that.
Yeah.
At the fiscal, at these different like quarterly or annual like shareholder meetings, they basically say, "Hey, we have games planned. Don't worry about it." Like they don't use those specific words, right? But basically, yeah. So I don't think that's necessarily an issue. They may even be like, "Hey, look, we're having a presentation today or tomorrow, and there's going to be a number of announcements or updates on other games." Not to mention, Nintendo's are actually already pretty much giving us a decent outline of what to expect for the rest of the year, right? Because we know we're getting Pokemon Scarlet and Violet in November, right? We're getting Sunbreak at the end of July and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, yep. Right? We just got Mario Strikers and we're getting Fire Emblem 3 Hopes this month, right? And Bayonetta 3 is slated for this year, right? So, and then Splatoon 3 as well has a hard release date. So most of their major products are already sort of set up.
I was literally thinking of all of those as I was saying my point, like, God, oh no, I'm contradicting my own point in my head as I'm making it.
Right, so like, what do the shareholders really need to know if pretty much most of their big releases have already known release dates for the year?
I wonder if Nintendo would want to at least have the ability to have a direct announced beforehand, maybe, because there is kind of like. The shareholders might want to know. Well, I mean,
if the direct is happening on the same day or the day before, like if we're within a day of the event, like Nintendo usually announces their direct at least a day in advance, sometimes two. And when it comes to E3, it's usually about a week or two in advance. Granted, it's not E3 this time, so we'll see what happens. But I feel like with that point in mind, they probably would have already announced the direct by the time the shareholder meeting happens if it's happening on the same day. So I don't think that's a major concern. That's just my take on it. I don't know this for a fact, right? But let's see how you guys are doing in the chat here, and then we'll actually probably go over the actual story. Okay, so it looks like we got just some amount of people already watching right now. Guys, like the stream. It really helps out. I would appreciate it. But let's see here. Let me check with the chat, and then I'll go over the full story. Let's see. Okay. Kitano Tatsu saying the shareholder meeting lining up with the direct date leak is probably coincidence more than anything else. Much more likely that something internal happened at Nintendo that made them not have the direct this week. Well, maybe. I'm going to talk about some things that some people have been saying, though, that might put that into question. I mean, we never really know what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Super Chris, unless there's been an official confirmation from Nintendo, I'm not buying the direct rumors. That's not necessarily an unhealthy perspective. That maybe you shouldn't buy any rumors.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, because we've been getting different things, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Joy CJ, with so much going on, that's why I guess July. We usually get a direct every 4 to 5 months, so June, July makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's a loose-ish estimation there. That's not, I don't think it's entirely out of the question. Having Hope 5, maybe they could announce tomorrow. It is rumor, right? So until it's actually officially announced, we don't know what's actually happened. Nintendo could decide that the direct is happening this week if it's already been recorded and it's all good to go. Like if everything's already recorded, locked in, they all they have to do is upload. So
Nintendo could literally decide to not do it on the 29th just because the date got leaked.
They could delay it, or they could come out with it sooner.
I don't want to do it. Just be unexpected.
They could even shadow drop it tomorrow, which I'm not expecting. That would be unprecedented. For an E3 style direct, it would be unprecedented.
I don't think that'd be a good idea. I feel like they only shadow drop the minis, not even like the full directs.
Yeah, I mean, typically when they shadow drop something, it's because it's not as significant.
Not as big a deal.
Yeah. And the E3 ones are usually announced more than a day or two in advance, but oftentimes about a week or two in advance or more. So the implication being that the E3 directs are considered by Nintendo themselves internally the biggest deal, right? Like if we have a tier system, right? You have on the very bottom tier of like direct presentations, you have the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase, which is a mouthful and probably will never come back again. It was solely for the pandemic year. I kept telling people that. No one believed me until, guess what? They haven't happened.
The first one was so bad, and then they weren't so bad after that.
They had some good ones, yeah, but they weren't really about Nintendo things, right? But that's like the bottom of the total pool in terms of like directs. Then you have the Nintendo Direct Mini, right? And sometimes there are some Nintendo Direct Minis that are like really big Nintendo Direct Minis that almost feel like directs, like the one where they kind of showcase Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Definitive Edition. That was pretty much the biggest direct we had the entire year in 2020, if I'm not mistaken. We had a Nintendo Direct Mini in March of 2020. Yeah. We never had a general direct that year. But that Direct Mini was like 35 minutes long.
A Mario Direct
wasn't much. It wasn't much of a mini, right?
Oh yeah, I do remember being.
You do have those. And there are those specialized directs, right? But I feel like it's kind of like a tangential thing, right? So that's to the side, right? And then you have like the Nintendo Directs you see
indie directs and things.
Even lower. That's like under partner showcase.
What indie is good? Indie has good things.
No, it's good.
The first partner showcase.
None of this is about quality necessarily. It's more about mass appeal.
What's your hype levels?
Mass appeal and hype levels, right?
Indie is very low.
Right, like so that's really what I'm getting at here. I didn't even put it on the totem pole. But then you have Nintendo Directs, which typically happen in September or the beginning of the year, or both, right? And then you have the E3 Direct, which is like the top of the top, okay? So,
yeah.
E3's canceled, so what are we getting? We're hoping there's an approximation to that, right? But Nintendo hasn't made any sort of announcement yet, so we'll kind of see. But I'm going to read the super chat here, and then we're going to... Well, I'm gonna read a couple things, and then I'm gonna actually talk about the story. Okay, so Nish Quick Pops, thank you very much for the $5 super chat, very much appreciated. Last year, everyone was calling Breath of the Wild 2 for the E3 Direct. I feel like this year people are more hesitant when I feel like it should be the opposite. A very interesting point, actually, right? I think people at this point have been so burned by expecting Breath of the Wild 2, every single year, that people have basically been trained to just not expect Breath of the Wild 2 until it happens.
They got Zelda delay PTSD.
Right. I mean, I feel like I'm experiencing it as well, too, because I think, you
can't trust anything. It's like, I don't trust it to be next spring. In the back of my mind, the thought is, it's going to get delayed again.
My prediction is...
it's not going to show up at E3 or whatever replaces it.
Maybe it'll give us, like, Tamagotchi Life or something. But, my prediction is that we do see Breath of the Wild 2 in a summer direct.
Yeah.
Presumably this June.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get a big summer blowout?
I mean, I don't know if it's going to have, like, a big 20-minute segment. I think it might be less than that. But I do think Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be there.
We'll get a name drop.
But I will say there is some doubt because, we've seen when Nintendo's handled things. And I also have some doubt about the release date this next spring in 2023. I do think it probably is coming out then. But, there's some fear, there's some hesitance. I'll even say, though, when I predicted that Breath of the Wild 2 would be coming out for this holiday, before that was, derailed, I still wasn't 100% sure. I was more like 50-50, right? Yeah. But, I stuck to my guns just because, I made a call and, ride or die, right? Not that I would...
Yeah.
I mean, if you pay attention to me, I try... I feel like, I try and consider both angles, even if I am biased towards one. That's just how things are. But, anyway... Yeah, I ultimately I think it's because people have just come to expect delays or not seeing Breath of the Wild 2. And while you can argue, Brandon's made this point many times, that E3 is usually the time where Zelda is truly showcased and fully showcased, E3 is canceled. So is this direct going to be the equivalent, or is it going to be something a little bit lesser? Where is it going to fall on that totem pole, right? So only time's going to really tell. But I'm optimistic we will get news relatively soon. I'm seeing here, hopefully I'm pronouncing the name correctly, Icsvinsk. Icsvinsc. Hey Andres, as a financial analyst working in a mid-big company, it's common sense to always show your next upcoming big thing before the investors call so you can get them excited and optimistic. Hence why I believe it makes much more sense to Nintendo to present us a direct before June 29th when they're having their investors call. Maybe that is the case. I get what the point there. I understand the logic behind that you want your investors to kind of be aware. Yeah. But if they're not announcing any hardware, and most of the major releases that are coming out in the next few months are pretty much already sort of outlined, I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make in terms of sort of detailing more of those games, right? Like, the idea of this direct is mostly just giving us information on what we already know. We already know about Breath of the Wild 2's existence, and Nintendo's already pretty much told us it's likely coming out by the end of the fiscal year, right? We already know about Pokemon, we already know about Xenoblade and Splatoon and Bayonetta and Mario Rabbids. Those are like the big releases.
I have a theory. I imagine when they have directs, especially if they show something like Breath of the Wild 2, their stock goes up. I imagine that everything associated with that is just generally good. Because obviously they're showing something that's like a huge moneymaker for them. So showing something like that can get you immediate results, like your stock price is going up or any kind of numbers bumping right before the meeting that you can then tell your shareholders to get them more on board.
So, I mean...
And that might not be like the biggest thing ever, but it's another thing that could help.
Sure, but I guess the question is, like, how desperately does Nintendo need to, like, impress their investors to the point where they need to say, hey, look, here's the latest news on our stock since we announced something. Like, I don't know how dire that is. I don't understand the full details on that. But to Brandon's point, and actually kind of to the point we've been speaking on, because there is like this flexibility of the time zones and when exactly something may or may not happen. Let's say the investors meeting, I mean, we know it's happening Japan time on 29th. What if the Nintendo Direct, as Brandon mentioned earlier, happens on the Tuesday beforehand? So for us, 28th in the morning. That's hours before the presentation, just enough time so Nintendo could perhaps say, hey, look, we revealed Breath of the Wild 2, and stock shot up, like, immediately. Like, you know, or, like, there's been a lot of talk. Like, that... They could do that, right? Like, it doesn't have to be, like, weeks beforehand.
Yeah.
Assuming that... I don't know how much this matters, but, you know, if that is a big concern, they could have the Direct the day before. But I think now it's important. Well, I'll come back to it. I think now it's important to kind of go over all the details. That way, there's kind of like a fuller understanding of what I'm trying to get at here. So, basically, there's this content creator / ex-journalist. She has her own company now, I think. She's done a number of things. She's been around the industry. Her name's Alana Pierce. She was doing a stream. And she was asked about the Nintendo Direct, and she said, "Oh, she works at
Sony's."
She did. She was working at a Sony studio. I think she might have left. I'm not certain, or she might still be with them.
I'm not sure. I thought she still worked with them.
There's been some movement with her career.
No, she does because she works on God of War Ragnarok right now.
Okay, then she's still with them. Anyway. So I'll go over Alana Pierce's history first, right? So yeah, I guess still is working with Sony, right? She used to work with Rooster Teeth. She has been a YouTuber for years, a popular one, and she used to work at IGN, right? So she's been around the industry. She knows people. Oh, yeah. She is an industry insider, like literally. So she could in theory know someone, right? And during her stream, she was asked about it, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I was told about this, but it wasn't told by Nintendo, so I can say it and I won't get in trouble." Paraphrasing here, but it's basically what she said. And she said it was gonna be June 29th. Now, do I hear that and think, "Oh, that's it. It's happening June 29th for sure. There we go." No, that alone is not enough information for me, because one, there is that flexibility of time zone, right? Like June 29th in Japan or June 29th here, right? And also, the date for Direct can change. That's the thing about talking about stuff that hasn't been announced yet. Because it hasn't been announced yet, it's kind of a fluid process. Something can change behind the scenes. Yeah. Maybe it happens earlier. Maybe it happens later. We don't know. But I will say that there have been a few other industry insiders that have come out and have corroborated this information. So Nate the Hate or Direct Feed Games, same person, just different account, has seconded this information. Now, I believe he sort of suggested 28th, 29th, right? So around there, that sort of weird time zone window, right?
Makes sense, yeah, with the time zones, yeah.
Yeah, so around then, he's heard it's supposed to happen. He's kind of pretty much, he supported this information is coming from Alana Pierce. And also, Game Explain, Andre Seegers, has also corroborated this information as well, right? So you have Direct Feed Games. Most people consider this person pretty reliable. Game Explain, and Alana Pierce, right? So these are all known industry insiders who have information and have, like, we take them seriously. They're not just, they don't just speak nonsense, right? Like, there's some integrity there. Now, again, just because that's what they heard, that doesn't mean that plan can't change, right? Like, if you watch Game Explain's video on it, that the very same point I'm making was made there. Right, so definitely still take it with a grain of salt. But the idea is that's the information that's going around. That Nintendo's going to host a Direct on the 28th or 29th. And to Brandon's point, and to some of you, to some of the points you guys have made in the chat, maybe it does make sense for the Nintendo Direct to happen right before the shareholders meeting and not literally as it's happening or right after. That way that information is now readily available and made to the public. The only thing I'm arguing is that even though I think this Direct could be a banger, I don't think what's going to be announced in the Direct is going to really move the needle too much for the investors. And I could be mistaken on that. But if you watch my predictions video, basically I just predicted that Nintendo's going to give us information of things we already know about, plus a couple other little things. Now, there is a couple things that are actually kind of huge. So maybe I'm off here, right? There are a couple things that are a little huge that I'm thinking that they could be shown off, and this could be actually could move the needle. So I'm now realizing that maybe I should backtrack on my statement as I think about it a bit more.
I also think it's more about the consumer's reaction to the Direct than what's actually shown. Because they could show just more gameplay of stuff we already know, and if that's what people want, then their reception of Nintendo is going to go up, which will lead to sales and other things like that, which is what investors want. So if they can show that their investors, that their Direct got 10 million views or whatever, whatever it gets, and it was highly talked about, it's been trending on Twitter, everybody's talking about Nintendo now because of this Direct. That's all they really need. They don't need to have... So, because the investors, they're not gamers for the most part. There might be one, I don't know, probably not though. Like, usually investors are not actually really into what they're investing in. It's just something that they're doing on the side for money. So they don't care about if Breath of the Wild 2 gets shown or not. All they care about is what the reception was.
I mean, I guess I'll say that Treehouse footage for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Treehouse footage for Breath of the Wild 2, both of those games are going to be really significant releases. Pokemon's going to be the first true open world game. I mean, if you think about back when they showed off Sword and Shield at a Treehouse, that had there was significant waves that came from that Treehouse event for Pokemon Sword and Shield. So, if there's a Treehouse segment planned for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and they showcase this game, actual gameplay in the open world, that could make a big difference. So, I guess that is something that should be considered there. And then, same thing with Breath of the Wild, too. What they show of this game could give people a bit of a gauge as to how significant it's going to be.
And the name will trend for so long.
I mean, it could be as simple as, hey, this game is actually close to completion. We are close to actually playing this game. We're close to seeing this game come to market. If Nintendo doesn't show it off, that might make people doubt that it's even going to be ready for spring.
If Nintendo is confident in spring and they know the date, they may post pre-orders, which also could be very good for investors.
Yeah. I mean, if we believe the voice actor leak, which doesn't really seem like we should disbelieve it, that does imply that Breath of the Wild 2 is deep into development, because usually voice acting work is done late into the production of a game. So, you know, granted, maybe it's just voice acting for a particular part, and they're going to do the rest later. But if they're doing voice acting for something, that probably would be if it's not for the game itself, but just a part of the game, why are they even doing that? Because they're preparing a presentation.
Yeah.
Which would probably be in a summer direct. So either way, I think the implication is, hey, Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be shown off fairly soon. And if it's going to be shown off fairly soon, that sends the message that the game is progressing very well and probably, hopefully this time, actually going to release according to plan. So, I mean, you know, I guess while I was trying to argue that maybe it doesn't matter, I guess it's a legitimate and healthy update on Breath of the Wild 2 and showing off Scarlet and Violet. Both those things could maybe move the needle a little bit. But the other thing I was going to get at, is because I was predicting, like a pseudo prediction, because I said it could be one of two different things. I do think Nintendo's going to fill out the lineup with a couple more games for the second half of the year beyond what's just been mentioned and announced. One of those, I believe, is the Metroid Prime remake, and another is a bit of a toss-up for me, right? You and I have talked about the possibility of it maybe being Pikmin 4, which I don't think moves the needle that much.
Yeah, Pikmin 4 would be great.
But something that might move the needle a lot is actually a new Mario game. And I'm not even saying 3D Mario. I think Nintendo's waiting on 3D Mario until they're going to push their next new big piece of hardware.
I think so as well.
And I don't think we're that far off from that, but it's not a this year thing. So what I'm suggesting is that maybe we see a 2D Mario game, like a brand new original 2D Mario. We haven't seen this since like 2012. It was the last time we saw an original 2D Mario come out. So it's been 10 years since then. But with the Mario movie,
and can you really call New Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe, or just U, I guess, at the time? Can you really call that a unique game?
Technically,
I don't think so. I think it's been longer.
Technically, it is, but I understand your point. Is the Mario movie though? Is that slated for next spring?
Next year.
Just next year? Is it just blanket next year?
I just think blanket next year, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
According to Google, it's April 7th, 2023.
Okay, well, that's spring then, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, okay. Well, either way...
Did they announce that exact date?
That's what Google says.
I think that might be a placeholder. I don't know.
It may be a placeholder, but I believe the story is spring 2023.
Okay. That makes sense. If it was supposed to come out holiday this year.
I remember there was a Twitter post. Yeah, so, okay, here's an official post from Nintendo of America, Miyamoto. This is Miyamoto. After consulting with Chris Son, my partner at Illumination on the Super Mario Bros. Film, we decided to move the global release to spring 2023, April 28th in Japan, and April 7th in North America. So that date is correct. I didn't misremember. I did remember the spring part, but they were more specific. My deepest apologies, but I promise it will be well worth the wait. So we do have a hard release date on its release timing. Go on.
When did you say they're getting it versus us? Like May 28th?
Japan's getting it April 28th. Here in North America, it's coming out April 7th.
They're getting it way later.
We're getting it sooner.
Which probably translation time, I'd imagine.
Maybe.
Well, that doesn't even make sense.
It does make sense
American
because
studio making it, they would have to.
And they are using English voice actors, English-speaking voice actors. Yeah, so I think it does make sense. But it is an interesting twist.
Because of Nintendo in Japan, but Illumination is an American studio. So.
Yeah, but it's kind of interesting though when you think about that. It's coming out North America before Japan. Like it's usually the other way around. Yeah. Like right now, I am freaking out because
that's what I
Dragon Ball Superhero came out in Japan and there's leaks abound everywhere, and I am so excited for this movie, but it's not going to be made available in North America until August 19th, and I can't wait for it. But anyway, point is, it's interesting how normally things are like that, where if it's coming from Japan, it's gonna, we have to wait, or we're fortunate it's a worldwide release. It's just kind of it's different because it's reversed this time. But again, to your point, to our point, I guess, Illumination, English-speaking voice actors, it all makes sense. But anyways, back to the actual point here. The Mario movie is coming out next year, right? And it's releasing in April. Okay, that's not that far from now. We are, about 9 months away? 9 to 10 months away? We're less than a year away from the release of this movie. So they're gonna have to start the marketing for this movie soon. And when I say marketing, I mean like an actual trailer. So oftentimes we start seeing trailers for movies at least a year in advance, sometimes a little bit more. We're less than a year away from the release, and we haven't gotten a trailer yet. I think there's a pretty good chance that not even a teaser, no actual footage yet. I think it makes sense to think that there's a decent chance that a Mario movie trailer could show up in the top of the totem pole in terms of Nintendo Direct presentations, right? So if we are getting that level of Direct, I don't think it's a stretch to think that we're going to be seeing that there. And that's part of my predictions, that I think there's a good chance we see the Mario movie, right? So the Mario movie is a needle mover, okay? That moves the needle.
Movie's a big deal.
Right? And if there's a Mario game to come out alongside of it, I don't think it's 3D Mario. I think it might be 2D Mario. Or when I say alongside of it, I mean like they announced it around the same time and it comes out this year. Right.
Should have come alongside it, essentially.
Yeah, relatively close.
The movie hadn't got delayed.
Yeah, good point. Both those things, along with actual hard details on Breath of the Wild 2 and showing off in detail the first true open world Pokemon game, all those things actually are needle movers. So I guess I'll retract my initial statement that maybe it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to fully retract it because I think we still know about these things for the most part.
It's a factor, but I don't think they need to. They do not need a Direct beforehand, but I do think we have shown the myriad ways of which a Direct beforehand could help.
It could help, but I do question how much it really matters. But definitely, they are things that are going to be significant, and they will have some implications for investors, I suppose. Because, if you see the Mario movie trailer and it's received well, that's huge sales potential.
Yeah, they obviously care about having certain things happen before, like, meetings and end of quarters and end of fiscal years, obviously, because they, pack games and stuff around that. We see, every March, we get, a big tentpole game to end off the fiscal year, to boost numbers before the end-of-year meetings and stuff. So clearly they care about boosting numbers during these meetings. Otherwise, they wouldn't position games and things around them. And September they have the meetings.
They always have the big release.
Huge Direct then. So it seems they plan releases and events generally around the same month, the same time frame of these meetings.
So when we talk about games coming out to close the fiscal year, those big games literally translate to better financial results. Right?
Yeah.
Announcements don't necessarily translate directly to better financial results.
Not necessarily.
Well, all I'm saying is not directly, right? Because Nintendo can announce 2D Mario, but the 2D Mario sales aren't going to start immediately, right? The game's not going to be out.
It would probably affect their stock immediately, though. And that's financial. Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying there isn't reason here. All I'm stating is that I feel like I'm not saying you're wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply trying to argue kind of both sides here, right? And I do agree
I
that
think
if a new 2D
Nintendo's
Mario is
doing
on the
so
way,
well these days.
an investor wants to know that. For sure. Like, absolutely. It's a big deal. That 2D Mario used to be a bigger seller than 3D Mario. Okay?
Yeah.
It's only this generation where 3D Mario is outdoing 2D Mario. And I'm glad it's like that because I technically prefer 3D Mario.
Is not good anymore.
Well, yeah.
2D Mario is just not that good anymore.
But imagine if Nintendo were to make a good one. Like, that could be a huge seller. It could outsell Mario Odyssey, which is around like 24 million or something like that, or close to that number. So I mean, imagine
2D Mario would probably do that.
Yeah, 2D Mario could see at least hitting 20 million, maybe more. With the Mario movie, there could be a huge boost in sales there, right? I mean, in theory, it could be in the top 3 best-selling games on Switch. So it's a tremendous needle mover, for sure. So. Anyway, I mean, I would agree that it makes sense to have the Direct before. I've only been trying to argue that it may not matter that much, just because most of the things that are coming out this year are kind of already known.
I don't think Nintendo's sweating over it. They're not like, oh god, if we don't have a Direct before the investors meeting. It's like they're Nintendo during the Switch era right now. They're not too worried about it.
And let me also clarify. I'm talking about the Mario a Mario game getting announced and making a big deal. There may not even be a Mario game coming out. Yeah. So, you know, again, to the other point I'm making, we already know about the Mario movie. We already know about Breath of the Wild 2. We already know about open world Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. These things are already known. We're just waiting to get more details on them. So if there's nothing else,
we haven't seen any footage. I think the Mario movie itself, just seeing a trailer for the Mario movie is like a huge deal. Seeing the first trailer for an official Nintendo movie is absolutely massive.
Oh, I mean, I'm right there with you.
Other than like their first animated movie.
I'm right there with you.
Really bad one.
You know, on that note, because again, I'm jumping from one side of this argument to the other, because I'm simply just trying to argue both sides. What about Metroid Prime 4, right? Metroid Prime 4 obviously probably doesn't have the same sales potential as Mario or Pokemon. No. Probably not even Zelda. I mean, you could even argue Zelda has better sales potential than Mario these days. They're all huge, right? Metroid's not on that level. Yeah. It hasn't been. But Metroid Prime 4 presents a nice opportunity because it could be the game that pushes Metroid to another level. Right, Metroid Dread has been a good start, but Prime has the ability to go to an even higher level. If Metroid Prime 4 is shown off, like an actual gameplay trailer, I would argue that the reception of that could also help to, you know, bolster kind of just approval of Nintendo and what they're doing with their projects, right? It's not even just the fact that Metroid Prime 4 might sort of push the Metroid franchise as a whole to another level, right? So I'm going beyond Metroid Prime 4 selling well. I'm going beyond Metroid as a brand becoming even bigger. I'm also getting at that what we see from Retro Studios could also bode really well, because then that could be implicative that we have a studio in Texas, a Western studio from Nintendo, that can now output perhaps consistently AAA content. And that's a big deal too, right? So that's another thing, right, to consider. Now, again, all of these things, I do not know how significant they are for investors, but I do imagine they must be of some importance, because they do have implications for Nintendo's, you know, financial future. So we'll kind of see on that. Ultimately, though, I do kind of agree that maybe we should see the Direct before that annual meeting. But it could be like just a day before. It could be 12 hours beforehand. And I think it would be okay.
Could be 1 hour beforehand.
In theory. In theory, yeah. I'm going to check in with the chat here. Is there something else you wanted to add to what we've been talking about?
No, I think we tied that up nicely, honestly. Okay. Cover both sides of it.
All right. Podcast is over. See you later, guys. No, but let's see what you guys have to say. You know what's funny, though? How long have we been going on for? We've been going on for like 40-ish minutes, right? 50 minutes. For some people, that's already a long show, right? For us, that would be really like that. No, we're just
starting, bro.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Well, tonight might not be a long show. We'll see what happens. But let's check with the chat here. Let's see what you guys are saying. Focusing on ads right now. The Megaton Menace. The 35-minute direct that had Xenoblade Definition was shadow dropped. And it was a direct mini. So totem pole, right? But hey, it was a big direct mini, but it was a direct mini. That's how Nintendo chose to market it. Had they not given it the mini moniker, I would have just called it a bad Nintendo Direct. Like, I like the Direct, right? But it's just kind of like...
It was pretty good.
No, it was. I mean, it had Xenoblade, so I loved it.
It had Xenoblade.
But it's just about expectations, really, right? So, like, if as a full-scale Direct, I would have felt that it was lacking.
Well, they saved Paper Mario for afterwards.
Yeah, they announced it like 2 months later.
It was announced that on its own.
It was strange. You would have thought that could have been in there. But all I was getting at is that by putting the mini part, it should change your expectations, right? Because each sort of branding comes with a certain expectation, you know?
Certain salt level that you should be expected to take with you.
Well, the thing is, you know, some people are upset regardless of how Nintendo markets it, you know? Like, the partner showcases, again, bottom of the totem pole, excluding indie shows, and people were still upset, you know? And I think that was a weird time, though, because we were starved for, like, actual, like, hardcore, like, first-party Nintendo content, and Nintendo wasn't giving us much on that. So people were just kind of hoping the partner showcase would finally give us something. Yeah, right? So, you know. Expectations can throw people off.
It was like a Wii U time in terms of announcements. It was terrifying.
Having Hope 5. I really don't believe it'll be on June 29th unless Nintendo says so. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess Brandon and I are kind of suggesting we think it's happening on June 28th.
Yeah. If it's gonna be either one of those two dates, then yeah.
Yeah, or it could be to the other point I've been trying to suggest, that maybe it doesn't matter that much and it happens afterwards. Or on the same day.
Good.
Like,
before.
We're gonna see soon.
Could be sooner.
You know? Nishwick Pops, this is the month for Zelda. We'll be very surprised we don't see a title at least. Yeah,
I was going to say, I do find it kind of weird that they would just plan to have the Direct right before the meeting. Like, why plan it that way? It's just strange to me. Why not, like, the week before? Why not next Tuesday? Not tomorrow, but, you know,
I already gave you my explanation for that, because Nintendo might not care that much. Because their known quantities are already known quantities. We're just getting more details on them. I think that would be the reasoning. If that's what's going on, that would be the reasoning.
Come out on one day. What the reasoning is that don't care? Obviously, they picked the date
it's not
for
that they
a
don't
reason.
care, right? I'm only suggesting that it's possible that it's not that big of a deal. That what takes more precedence is just the show being ready and being revealed to the public when they think it's the best time. And the investors are already aware that the content is coming. I'm just wondering why they think
that's the best time.
Just because they don't know the exact specifics on what that content is, that doesn't. It's, you know, like that.
Right.
That may not matter that much. That's the only thing I've been arguing on the other side this whole time.
No, I get that. But why would you schedule it on the same day at all? Period. Why do that? Why not have a week before, a week after? Why not pace the news? You have all this information coming out from the meeting, but you have all this information from the Direct as well. So there's just a bunch of information. Why not space that out a little bit? Maybe
Nintendo's gonna is worried that they're gonna actually have to make more mention of new hardware at this point, and they're kind of hoping the Direct just kind of has so much going on that people just kind of ignore the little detail. Maybe. Probably not.
Maybe.
But you know, we're not gonna miss it. We're gonna we'll people will look. You can't hide it just by providing more information. Game walkthroughs added me. Do you think we'll see some sort of Zelda release this year? So, I mean, I've talked about this before at some point or another, probably a couple times. My basic answer is yes, but I'm not 100% certain because Nintendo has told us that Breath of the Wild 2, not the actual name, is coming spring 2023. And what that to me suggests, assuming their net's not actually delayed, because it might be delayed, it might even be internally delayed and it still comes out spring, because spring goes as far as like early June, technically. But typically when Nintendo says spring, what they really mean is they're targeting...
Still spring, to be honest.
What?
I think it might still be spring.
Yeah, but I mean, what I was going to say though is that typically when they say spring, they're targeting by the end of the fiscal year, which would be March 31st. Yeah. Okay? And we tend to see huge releases in that month. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is actually proving to be a fairly substantial release. Monster Hunter Rise, best-selling third-party game on Switch. Animal Crossing New Horizons had the fastest sales for the first year or two ever in a Nintendo game. Yeah. Obviously, Breath of the Wild came out in 2017. That was a big release as well. So there's a history of significant releases then. So the belief is that Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out in March. So let's say that holds true. We don't know if it will, but if that is the case, then that's not too far from now, right? Yes, Nintendo has shown that they want to have a significant Zelda release come out every calendar year, at least during the Switch era. I could see them potentially skipping this calendar year only because Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out the very beginning of next year. So I could see them skipping it. If there's a calendar year to skip, this is the one because Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out in March. Not that far removed from this calendar year. However, there have been the rumors for both Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. These are games that have been done for years because they were done on Wii U. They just need some minor modifications so they can work on Switch. It's been suggested that the reason we haven't seen them yet is simply because Nintendo is waiting for a time to put them out to sort of fill in the gap, right? So if it is viewed by Nintendo that there is a gap here, a need to give Zelda content to maintain that Zelda brand popularity by having that consistent annual calendar year Zelda release, then I do believe either one or the other or both come out this year. Right, so that's what I think would be the release, because I have a hard time envisioning it as say, for example, a new 2D Zelda or some sort of really cool Zelda spin-off, only because those things would be really cool.
How would they have had that ready?
Right, how would they, I mean, I don't know, we don't know what they've been working on behind the scenes necessarily, but the main point is something like a Twilight Princess Wind Waker HD, which would be ports of ports. It's like it's like their third release, right? They're not that significant of a release. So them coming out, say, 6-7 months before Breath of the Wild 2 is a little bit easier for me to sort of see happening as opposed to, say, a brand new 2D Zelda. I would envision there'd be a bigger gap between Zelda releases if they're two brand new products. But if it's an old product, then not so much. Take, for example...
I kind of buy into the...
What I was going to say, though, is that if you look at Mario, right... during the 35th anniversary celebration, we had Super Mario 3D All-Stars come out September, and that sold incredibly well, even though it was a limited release. 7-9 million, something like that, last I heard, around there. A multi-million seller, right? Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury came out February, so they're less than a 6-month gap there, about a 6-month gap. And that's also sold incredibly well. It's one of the best-selling games on Switch, even more so than 3D All-Stars, because, well, it wasn't a limited release. So they both came out fairly close to each other. And Nintendo actually did this again with New Super Mario Brothers Wii U Deluxe, whatever you want to call it. That port came out January, and then Mario Maker 2, I believe, came out in June of that year, which I want to say was 2019. So at least with Mario, Nintendo has shown a willingness to have pretty significant releases in terms of sales potential, because all 4 of these games sold really well. And they each pair came out within half a year of each other about. So could I see Nintendo doing it with Zelda? Yeah, I could.
Oh yeah, I definitely kind of can. I don't know if I believe it 100%, but I can see why it makes sense that Nintendo would be holding back Twilight Princess and Wind Waker on the Switch specifically for like a year when they don't have any new Zelda. Because why have those not been ported? We're pretty much out of the age of Wii U ports to the Switch for the most part. It's not really like a huge thing that's constantly happening all the time anymore. And those are huge games that would have sold a ton if they'd been ported, but they weren't. Why? Why not? So I feel like Nintendo might have thought to themselves, hey, there might come a year where we have to delay a Zelda game. And we don't have anything for that year, and we're gonna want something. Let's just hold on to these, and we'll save them. And this is the year, and they'll release them. Yeah. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if I believe that 100%, but I can see that line of thinking.
If there's a time that's gonna happen, this is the time for it to happen. Basically.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it may be kind of a short gap, the one thing I think something that's worth noting is that if they don't release a Zelda game this year, this calendar year, then you're missing out new Zelda sales for a holiday season. Which, do I want to say it hurts the brand? I don't want to say like it'll be a huge detriment, but if the goal of Nintendo is to have Zelda kind of be a consistent thing like Mario and Pokemon, then they want to probably have something Zelda for the holiday. So, I'm more inclined to think that, Twilight Princess, Wind Waker HD, at least one of those two will be announced in this rumor direct for hopefully, at least by the end of the month. I'm hoping a little bit sooner, but we'll see. I think most likely. But, I mean, when I say most likely, I mean like 60-40, 70-30 at best, because you never really know. Because, again, I mean, I guess it's not again for this show, but I don't think we necessarily need those releases, because we already have a pretty good set handful of releases of games that are coming out, and there's going to be some other games. I've mentioned Metroid Prime Remake, for example, maybe a 2D Mario, or maybe a Pikmin 4 on top of everything else we know about. And if you throw in the Zelda games as well, I think that's actually a pretty darn good lineup, and one or two of those things could be missing, and it wouldn't be the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, we really just need... I mean, we were thinking 2022 is going to be like a killer year with Breath of the Wild. Like, it was almost too much. Yeah. So Breath of the Wild getting delayed and the potential of having a few more games announced, it's like, it's fine. We're good.
Yeah, like, it's kind of like, I guess, like, a lot of people wonder, with Breath of the Wild 2 gone, does that mean we get something that's of comparable sort of, like, hype and breadth and, like, sales potential?
Right. And I don't think you can.
I don't think there's anything out there that exists that could.
Yeah,
save like for Pokemon, I guess. But like, it's like kind of like almost like a little bit of a different thing. Yeah. And we always expected to see both. So the question is there anything else to fulfill? Like, it's kind of like 1A and 1B, right? Like, both Pokemon and Zelda were kind of considered like the two like biggest releases for the second half of the year. Is there anything else that can compare to Zelda beyond, obviously, Pokemon? And, the point is nothing, but what you can do is sort of make up for it with a number of smaller releases, right? You throw in a Metroid Prime remake, right, which maybe sells similar to Metroid Dread, maybe a little bit more. The two HD remasters for Zelda, those are probably going to sell a few million, maybe 5-6 million potentially. Like, I can see that pretty easily. And then you also throw in a Pikmin 4 or a 2D Mario. 2D Mario would be way more. Actually, if anything, in terms of like a just straight up sales, 2D Mario would be it, right? But in terms of like, I guess, hype level, right? I mean, again, you can't make up for with just one game, but with all those games together, it's pretty good. It's like a consistent set of releases throughout the second half of the year. Like, it's going to be multiple big games per month.
Yeah. And I would say, like, it's not like the competition have just an absolutely stacked release for the end of the year. A lot of the big games from both Sony and Microsoft got delayed to 2023. So they're all kind of in the same boat where their biggest games, for the most part, got delayed to next year.
You know, it's interesting, right? Because I think once upon a time we were kind of almost like a little bit salty at Nintendo because it felt like Sony and Microsoft had all these big releases ready to go, and Nintendo's like, oh, well, Breath of the Wild 2, we'll talk about it eventually. And now, well, yes, Breath of the Wild 2 has been kind of perpetually like sort of staved off or delayed or what have you. We have had the last couple of years have been sort of consistent quality content. It's not like any single release has been like the biggest, best thing ever, but there's been so many pretty good games coming out consistently. Like if you like playing more than one or two franchises, you've had a good time on Switch. Now, if you only like Zelda, if you only like Mario, then you might be disappointed. But if you have a more colorful sort of like palette for video games on Nintendo, you probably have been fed pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a surplus of games on pretty much every platform, I think, at this point. But
yeah,
it's impressive how many of the games on Switch are actually made by or published by Nintendo themselves. That's kind of the biggest difference I see between all the platforms.
You go back to like the GameCube era or the N64. I mean, N64 era, I thought they were pretty good. But there's always been this sentiment, not always, I'm exaggerating, but for a long time there's been this sentiment that there isn't good third-party support on Nintendo systems. And what has happened in the past is that you see droughts, right? It happened during it did happen during the N64 era. It happened during the GameCube era. It did even happen during the Wii era, where there were periods of time where there weren't significant Nintendo releases. And the hope of Nintendo over those years was that they would have third-party releases to sort of bridge those gaps. The irony of the situation is, Nintendo now does have kind of decent-ish third-party support. Not perhaps the way we expected, but they do have consistent third-party releases that they can sort of bridge those gaps. But the irony here is that they no longer need those gaps to be bridged because they've bridged it on their own, because now they are more consistent than ever before. Their rate of releases per one platform, because they only focus on one platform now, is better than ever. So, you know, to your point, Brandon, there is a surplus of games, right? Like if there are high quality games coming out almost every week, really, a number of them. So you do kind of have to pick and choose. You can't just have everything you want. Most people can, at least. I'm sure there's a few of you out there who can't afford to, or have the time, but most of us can.
How many great indie games are coming out these days? It's just like a new, amazing indie game announced like every single week. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out
there. People who don't play indie games because they're not AAA, you're missing out. What are you doing with your life?
Hello there, Rel. Hello there, Johnny Hernandez. Johnny's saying, I really hope the Nintendo Direct is on Wednesday, June 15th. Well, I'll tell you what. If Nintendo doesn't announce it tomorrow...
seems unlikely at this point.
They could announce it tomorrow. But yeah, I do kind of... Well, I do agree with the idea that it is kind of like a slippery slope to buy into a particular rumor. As I brought up earlier, the sources on this June 29th... Let me rephrase. This June 28th / June 29th direct rumor are pretty good. I think part of the problem here is that Alana said June 29th, but because there's this issue of time zones and there's probably some flexibility there, I think what's going to end up happening is that the direct is as Brandon and I are sort of suggesting, I think it may happen on the 28th actually instead. And what's going to happen is people are like, oh, see, she was wrong. She was just lucky. No, it was just kind of more of there's a bit of a flexibility there in terms of when it happens due to time zones and such. How that information is conveyed, things of that nature. Not to mention, even if you exclude that possibility, let's say it was going to be on the 29th, like, in America, so there's no, room for, debate there, right? that date can change. Nintendo can move it up or backwards. Like, they can do that. So, until it's announced, we don't know.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah. Gaming with Calvin. I'm praying for Metroid 6, even though there won't be Metroid 6. Of course, there won't. Prime 4, though. Yeah, I mean, Metroid 6, the sequel to Metroid Dread, I'm pretty sure they're going to work on that.
For a while.
And we're not going to have to wait 2 decades for it. I think it's going to come sooner.
No.
Probably
Maybe
just
like
less.
3 to 5 years?
Yeah, 3 to 5 years. I think that's a pretty good estimation. Heck, it could even be a year and a half from now. But that's the best case scenario. Probably.
I imagine best case it comes out like the year after Metroid Prime 4 releases.
Yeah, I think that's unlikely though, right? I think 3 to 5 is a healthier expectation.
Metroid in between.
I actually would like I would like to see a return of Metroid spin-offs. During the early 2000s, during the GameCube and Wii era, also DS era, right? Like that was a good time. And Metroid Advance.
Bring back Metroid Pinball.
Yeah, Metroid Pinball, Metroid Hunters. Like, those are some good spin-offs.
Hunters would do really well. Especially if they just made, like... What if they did, like, a free multiplayer, like, mode that you could... Like, a free multiplayer experience for Prime, but that was linked to, like, if you had the online service, you could play it for free. Like, like,
sure.
Kind of like they did with Tetris 99, but, like, for Prime.
Like, what if Prime 4 doesn't have DLC really cool. Per se, right? Like, but the DLC is more of hey, there's another individual release that's called Metroid Prime. I think
they should do something like that with Star Fox. I think that would be big.
Yeah.
But that's kind of off.
I would love that. Like when we talked about it before, we want there to be a couple like exclusive like online Nintendo games that are available for Nintendo Online users. You could still buy it separately if you so choose, but if it's an online game, you do need to pay for the Nintendo Online service. But like, yeah, like that would be awesome. It's something Star Fox-ish, which I mean, I guess you're alluding to it being something similar to like the Battlefront games.
Yeah, it could be like that, or like Halo multiplayer or something
for Star Fox.
Oh, for Star Fox, yeah. For Star Fox,
Fox, more like the Star Wars
like
games.
Star Fox 64, but like expanded, and just like the online. Literally, that's all. I need.
I think the problem with that is people would want also single player. But hey, like, where's the single player, right?
Would Star Fox like? Well, I mean, I'm sure people would, but like in general, like most people are. I feel like
it depends on how the game is structured.
The most popular thing ever, you know.
So the interesting thing, yes, we were totally tangenting here, but. The interesting thing about Star Fox, right, is I think there's a gameplay idea that's really just an expansion of ideas they've already expressed, right? So if you play Star Fox, the idea of Star Fox when you're going through the campaign isn't long. It's 3 to 4 hours, tops, right? But it's kind of highly replayable because there's different paths, different levels you may play,
in one sitting,
different events that can happen within a level, potentially different endings, right? So that's where the replayability is at, plus, sort of like a high score and time and stuff. But there's kind of like this war going on when you're kind of progressing through the different planets, right? And in Star Fox 2, they actually kind of do this. The game didn't come out until the Super Nintendo Mini. But there's an actual war going on that you can sort of interact with, and you can have something to do with what's going on with the actual war, sort of in like a semi-real-time thing. Oh. And then also in Starlink, they kind of did this as well. In Starlink, there were wars going on in space or battles, and you could interact with that. So imagine a Star Fox game where that campaign isn't fully lost, but it is an online game where there's different parties competing against each other, different players online, and there's varying dogfights occurring, but there are still on-rail sections mixed throughout this sort of in real time, like online battles occurring across a map of planets, right? So there is a war sort of being waged on. So you can still get that Star Fox experience where you're going from planet to planet, but the story has more to do with you and your teammates competing against other players online. And you still have these massive online multiplayer dogfights, but it's mixed in with a few other things to sort of mix with the gameplay. And that could, in theory, be like an online dedicated Star Fox game.
You know what I think is better than that?
Nothing.
Don't just scrap the campaign. You don't need the campaign. Screw the campaign. All you need is the multiplayer. Focus on the multiplayer, do that, and then just make an actual full Star Fox game release. Don't try to mix the two into some kind of weird hybrid that might or
this
might
is pretty
not
much
work.
what Star Fox already is, though. Is what I'm trying to tell you. Like that's what it is. Like there is a battle kind of happening within the progression of the single player. It's just there'll be some give and take with an online multiplayer.
Like, don't just go back to the idea of the N64 multiplayer, expand on it, have more people. Obviously, it's online, way more stages, more different things you can customize your ship. I don't know, things like that. And then just do that. Just release it. Just dogfights on different maps with different customization on your ship and stuff like that. That's all you need.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that.
Especially if
totally
it's free
fine.
online. Especially if it's like a free online game. It's all you need. I think that's honestly the best, most polished thing that you're going to get.
You know what's interesting, though? If it's free online, that could help to popularize the Star Fox brand, too.
Yeah. And then
people will play it.
Come up with a huge Starlink-like adventure for Star Fox instead of it just being a DLC thing.
Just to make sure I'm not being misunderstood here.
Version.
I was not talking about an open world adventure Star Fox game. I'm talking about multiplayer dogfights, but there being sort of a map system where there's sort of different battles that occur that can affect your positioning and progression of a battle that's being waged within a solar system.
Okay.
It's just like
an
an
extra.
extra.
Makes more sense. The way you explained that did not sound like that at all. The way you explained it sounded very much like Starlink, but then you work it into multi. It sounded like an MMO.
No.
Where
You don't fly around
but then there's
in a
also
giant open world solar system. It's
fighting.
more like a map that you progress on, where there are different battles, and you can choose to participate in those particular battles.
That's why that's why you said Star Wars Battlefront. I get it now. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Anyways, going back to Metroid, right? Because we're coming back to Calvin's question, right? Or in terms of Prime 4.
Oh, yeah.
Because we just started talking about spin-offs.
We
just talked about spin-offs and the Metroid spin-offs. We didn't even really touch on Metroid spin-offs. It's like the whole other thing. Yeah, I mean, I think Prime 4 has a good chance. I think the focus is probably Metroid Prime Remake. And I think Metroid Prime Remake alone is going to be sort of a teaser of Prime 4. Because the story, right? And when I say story, it's more of a rumor because it's not confirmed by Nintendo. But the sources are pretty good. Like Jeff Grubb, Emily Rogers, Imran Khan, different industry insiders. But the basic story is that Retro Studios was working on a build of Metroid Prime, and when Nintendo saw that, they're like, okay, make this into a full-on remake, but then also here's Metroid Prime 4. The implication being that the build, that they have a whole new engine running the initial Metroid Prime, but this engine would also have been used to make the new Metroid Prime 4. So, seeing Metroid Prime running with this new engine that supposedly Retro Studios has been working on is in itself a teaser for Prime 4.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like a foundation for Prime 4. So, you know, even if we don't literally see Prime 4, seeing the Prime 1 remake that's supposedly happening, I think is going to be a pretty good teaser in and of itself. However, they may say some things in relation to Prime 4 when they reveal this. And I think it might go beyond just saying, hey, development's going well, but that might just be it, because we'll see. But they've already done that, which is why I'm kind of hoping and thinking it might be a little bit more than that this time, but I'm not sure they're quite ready to do a full-on new trailer, although we did see that concept art on the Retro Studios Twitter page, the banner, that might be implying that they could start marketing it soon. What'd you say?
I said maybe they'll just do a suit reveal.
Maybe. Oh, but it could be a suit reveal. They've done that before.
In engine, and maybe just like the backdrop is just like the beginning.
It could be like a 5-second teaser. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. I'd be okay with that. Collins Perkins Taylor catching this live. Awesome. Divas added me. Don't worry, my uncle works at Nintendo, and on June 15th, we will have a full reveal and showcase of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Trust me, bro. I can't wait. Can't wait to see Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild is going to be the best.
So good.
Yeah. Hello there, basement band. Let's say I got an ad here for Giancarlo. Giancarlo suggesting she's just guessing what she thinks is the next Nintendo Direct. At first, it sounded like she was guessing, but if you continue to listen on to her, she indicated that she was told that date, and then she verified with something she was looking at on a screen. And regardless of whether she was just guessing or not, though, Game Explain and Direct Feed Games said that's when they think they heard it's happening as well. Again, you know, I still take it with a grain of salt because, you know, things can change. Maybe they misheard. Maybe they are misinformed. These are all possibilities. But if I had to guess, probably, I mean, like, I was hoping it would be this week, right? I was thinking it would be this week.
Yeah, same.
But with it not announced yet, my expectation is it might happen beforehand. So I'm kind of like semi-prepared for it to happen. But I'm sort of assuming that it probably isn't. So I'm prepared for it to happen, but I am also kind of, my expectation is that, yeah, I guess it's probably happening the last week of June.
I am so not prepared. I did not take any time off work because they didn't announce anything. Nintendo, please do not just shadow drop this tomorrow while I'm at work.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I kind of want some notice just so I can position myself from a work perspective.
Just a week before I can I can take off as long as I have as long as before they've written the schedule it's Sunday, I can take off. So as long as they get it the week before, I'm good.
I have a feeling they're
all I need.
I'm kind of afraid that they're not going to give us a week notice and they're going to just tell us like a day or two beforehand. Although if it is happening in the end of June, there's still time, right? Maybe they tell us this week or next week. There's still time.
I'm really sick the day that they announce this.
Maybe. Yep. Oh, I feel bad for you.
I'll just have to take a day off. It'd be impossible. I know it.
And this quick pops added me. All this corroboration reminds me of Switch Pro rumors of last year. Well, that is true. There were a number of there were credible sources suggesting something about Switch Pro, and then what happened?
Right.
Yeah.
But technically, a lot of the information that they shared was
correct.
Technically true. It just was not packaged in the same way that they thought.
Well, one part of the story that bothered me was that supposedly Nintendo wanted to announce it beforehand because there was going to be developers with actual games.
Yeah.
They'd be taking advantage of it and they would want this to be a known quantity. And that part of the story has proved to be very, very off.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that might have been something that Nintendo threw in there just to throw everybody off.
I don't
because
really.
That was like the only part of it that wasn't true.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't a 4K. But I feel like
the kickstand, the OLED screen, those things were
because that was like
on.
A separate thing. The part where Nintendo, everything about it being the Pro was not part of the rumors about the kickstand or the OLED screen or any of that. It was just something more assumed and thought of based off of other information, not directly tied to those.
Yeah,
but obviously,
I think that
those were coming. We thought that they were connected, but they obviously were not.
There's R&D for maybe a next gen Switch they were conflated.
Yeah. I mean, we already have seen through the GeForce leak, the video leak, that Nintendo has a next generation capable Switch like SoC planned. It's a thing. They have it. Whether or not that they're going to actually use that for the next generation Switch or not, I don't know. But they have a next generation version of hardware, real hardware, like not just proof of concept, like real, actual like numbers for exactly like all the VIN number, like like what, not VIN numbers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the product number. It is an actual product that exists. So obviously they have something that exists as a next generation Switch. Whether that will materialize or if it will change, or what? Who knows? Or maybe it was planned to come out sooner. I don't know.
Yeah. Something I want to add, though, right? To Nishquick's point, because we just talked about how there may have been conflation, right, of two different things that were going on, which kind of confused the reports, right? We've talked about how there's going to be this annual investors meeting on June 29th. What is the possibility? Now, I don't know what these other people have heard, and these are all intelligent people,
right?
Like
they obviously know that the investors meeting's that day. It's not something that they didn't know.
What are the odds that they confuse the investors meeting with a Nintendo
That literally
Direct?
happens on that day, pretty much every single year. It just doesn't seem like something that can confuse, versus a brand new system that's also like in active development and shifting plans, like the OLED versus like a new Switch. Those are both things that aren't just known hard dates. Like we didn't have hard dates for the OLED and stuff back then. We thought it was the same thing. So it's a completely different situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems very unlikely that would be confused in that way, considering we already knew about it. Literally, I mean, we know that the next year is probably going to be on June 29th as well. So it's not like this was anything crazy.
You would think it's unlikely, right?
Yeah.
You would think.
It seems very highly unlikely.
But, look at last year with the Switch Pro stuff. There's a lot of stuff that were said in reports that, were off. For whatever reason, they were off. So we'll see. Again, information
could be misinformation.
Could be
like purposely put out.
I
think that's more likely than somebody getting confused. Because I feel like it's very possible that was misinformation back then as well. But I also think it could be conflicting. See, that's my thing. Is like before, it's very easy to explain. With the OLED versus next-gen Switch, like, obviously you can see how those would get conflated. Because they're two very, very similar things. They're two new consoles. One of them's just...
Right, if you just look at a Switch OLED, like, on a table, and no one tells you what it is, you might assume that it is next-gen Switch. Or Switch Pro.
They're both new consoles. They're just different levels. A meeting is not at all the same as an announcement. Like, that kind of... It's not at all the same type of thing. One of them... Like, the meeting is mostly for Nintendo and the shareholders, and we can see it, and there's some stuff we can glean, but it's not really for us, It's not really for the consumers. It just so happens to be public. A direct is something specifically targeting consumers.
Hakan here in the chat is pointing out, Nintendo actually announced the Partner Showcase Direct that featured Monster Hunter in September of 2020 at the end of the investor quarter to call, like a day or two before. Interesting. Giancarlo said, investors only think about money, they don't care about money. That's funny. Yeah, Brandon lagged. It's fine, he'll catch up.
I lagged. I think it's probably on your end, because my internet's really good.
Yeah, I mean, his audio's been fine, but you're good. It just happened like once or twice, like nothing substantial. Yeah, I'm just moving through the chat here. That's a bit of a chat jump. Okay. Alright guys, we're close to ending the show. Honestly, I feel like we've covered the bulk of what needs to be discussed this week.
About 90 minutes?
Yeah.
Covered most of it?
Yeah,
if you guys take a few questions from the chat or something?
Yeah, we're gonna take a few questions, exactly, Brandon. So yeah, anything you guys want to sort of bring up or talk about, I'll kind of leave like next like 3 to 5 minutes for that. Yeah, so shoot them in the chat is your chance. Also, while you're at it, leave a like on the stream. That'd be appreciated. But we'll take some final questions or topics here before we close things out. I will point out that if you ask a golden question, it may extend the show more than 3 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We've been known to tangent and go on for another 30 minutes to an hour.
Us?
Yeah.
We are concise.
I will say that
we are on time. We stick to a schedule. Thank you very much.
Kind of.
Not at all.
I will say that
all.
I now have to get up an hour earlier than usual because my schedule has been moved down an hour per day. So I get up an hour. I do get out an hour earlier though, which is nice. So I had a little bit of extra prep time today for the show, as opposed to kind of like scrambling last minute. I had time to kind of like de-stress a little bit, shower, eat food, and then show up. So, I had just enough time to be kind of not scrambling, which is great. I like to not have to scramble too often. Oh, I do like scrambled eggs though, and I can make it pretty. I make some pretty mean scrambled eggs. It's not good for you because I put a lot of cheese and butter, but it tastes damn good.
Hell yeah,
it's
boy!
Fluffy too. Let's see here, Izzy. I'm keeping my expectations in check regarding a Nintendo Direct happening or not. With all the game releases for this year, I see this as a 2020 repeating itself again. I don't know about that. 2020 was because of the pandemic. I don't think
it was bigger than E3 being canceled.
Yeah.
I think Nintendo legit didn't know what they were going to do exactly at the time.
I will say, I know this happened a little while ago already, but I will thank Giancarlo, Dio, and Having Hope for blessing me when I did sneeze. Very much appreciated. Thank you for protecting me from the demons.
Yeah, gotta cast those out.
Yeah, that's why we
cast the devils out.
Yeah. Joyce J, I know something is coming. If nothing else, Nintendo likes money. The rumors are just scarce this year. Yeah, I mean, Nintendo's it has to give us news. They're not gonna just not give us news. They're gonna do it.
Right.
The pandemic year was a strange year because, well, one, a lot of things were changed, canceled, or delayed. That's not really the case this year. So, I mean, obviously E3 was canceled, but in terms of actual games, the games are still coming. So they're gonna talk about them. Sooner than later. They're not going to wait until September this time. They're going to talk about them. I'm assuming this month. So,
They still got to talk a bunch about Xenoblade 3, what's happening exactly with that world
and they
and
could
that
do
story.
that. They could do that through trailer drops and announcements on Twitter and such. But
they have other games they need to talk about too, like Splatoon 3. We still don't know who's gonna be the pop idols of that or anything like that.
We should get at least a Splatfest on that. That'd be nice.
Yeah.
A test fire.
And then there's Bayonetta that we don't know.
Yeah, that needs a showcase.
Metroid Prime needs to be revealed, assuming
Sparks
that's
of
real.
Hope.
Like, I feel like, Sparks of Hope. I feel like there's just so many of them. You could do trailers, but that's a ton of trailers to do. Why not just do an event?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people agree there's going to be a direct. I think what happens, though, right, is that because we don't get the direct when we expect it, people start to lose heart. People start to lose hope. Yeah. They start to get disappointed, or they start preparing themselves for a disappointment.
Which is fair and possibly healthy. I mean, there's a balance to things, right? There's also, like, maybe, being too optimistic isn't always the best course of action, but being too negative isn't either. True.
Right? I think there's
too
a balance
pessimistic
there.
is you gotta allow yourself to have some hope, some happiness, some kind of joy. Don't just
or at least play Mario Strikers.
Downer.
I have to pick that up. I haven't picked it up yet. Yeah. Maybe I'll pick it up this weekend. I'll have more time.
Then will Life get a 9 out of 10?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to pick. I haven't picked it up yet, but I want to. So I'll be probably picking up soon. But time, money. I just had to U-Haul like a whole bunch of stuff down from one state to the other side of the country.
With gas prices
from last weekend. So I'm kind of still recovering. It took a lot out of me. Yeah, that was a substantial amount of funds that I had to take and use. It was not pretty. Let's see here. All right, I got an at from Zonai Theorist. Do you think since there's only 7 main titles left for 2022 after Fire Emblem that was released, that the next direct will feature some of the early 2023 game releases reveals. Inevitably,
well,
I think
have Breath of the Wild 2 in there.
Yeah, at least Breath of the Wild 2. I wouldn't be surprised if there's another game.
January, February game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see at least one more. That's for early next year. That it's pretty par for the course, honestly. This happens every direct. Really Just go back and watch last year's E3. What was talked about there? I'm trying to think about it. Actually, you know what?
I don't remember now that you asked the question.
Yeah. Let's see. I think if we can look up E3 2021 Nintendo, and we can actually see like a highlights of it.
Yeah.
I think there'll be like an actual YouTube page, not YouTube page, but
you can probably find an article that just has like literally all the announcements on the list.
Yeah, I'm just looking for Nintendo's actual site on it because they did some stuff. Although, okay, apparently key moment.
I just imagine it'd be easier just to find somebody who has a list.
I'm looking at something here. So you have Smash Brothers. Okay, that was for that year. Life is Strange, Marvel's Worms Rumble. Okay.
Worms Rumble.
2 Point Campus.
You don't
Monkey
know about
Ball,
Worms?
Mario Party Superstars, Metroid Dread, Just Dance, Kakarot, Golf. Shin Megami Tensei 5. This is all actually pretty much consistently for last year. Sparks of Hope was discussed, and that hasn't come out yet. Breath of the Wild 2 was mentioned, was mostly Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
Huh.
I
guess the only thing there was Mario Rabbids and Breath of the Wild 2.
Oh yeah.
But Breath of the Wild 2 didn't even have a trailer.
1 to 3 titles that are for the year after.
No. So it was 2 things for the year after. It's Breath of the Wild 2 and Sparks of Hope. So, you know, that's... Yeah, we did get a new trailer at E3 2021. What am I thinking? Like, we did. So, there you go. There was 2 significant things.
Sky trailer.
Granted, Breath of the Wild 2 is going to get delayed, has been delayed to 2023, but I can see that getting discussed in probably another game. Yeah. Let's see here. Hakan, did you hear about the new Fire Emblem game leak? Supposedly will feature characters from across the entire series. So no, I did not hear about that. I actually haven't been paying too much attention to this next Fire Emblem game. But given that it's actually a Muso style game, that doesn't shock me at all, because Muso style games tend to include an exorbitant amount of characters, more than you might think based off the story. That's pretty par for the course for a warrior style game. So, yeah, I don't think that's a stretch. I mean, there's enough characters in 3 houses that I don't think they need to go beyond the 3 houses.
I'd be surprised if they did. I kind of felt like they'd be more concentrated on the 3 house people, you know? I would be surprised if there were just a ton of other ones, because they already had Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah,
like, that's their kind of more general
one. That is a good point.
Like it wasn't like the Breath of the Wild. I forget the name of that one, but the Breath of the Wild one.
I mean, maybe
2 years ago.
Maybe what they would
that
do.
That one didn't have a bunch of just extra characters from across the whole series.
But I don't know. Right? Again, I haven't seen this rumor. But it wouldn't surprise me. Okay. Well, I do agree with you, Brian, that I think the expectation should be they're going to focus on characters from 3 houses because there's plenty of them to focus on. Similar to Age of Calamity, because they focus on the Breath of the Wild style characters, absolutely. But I don't think it's a complete shocking surprise. I wouldn't think that if they introduce a few characters from previous games, like especially if it's like a few like big ones, you know, like a Marth, for example. The kind of characters that might get featured in Smash Brothers. Like if there's a handful of those, I don't think that's like this grand like travesty of justice to like bring in these characters that ultimately are just going to be popular characters.
It does seem like they're trying to do some kind of like actual story and not like the Fire Emblem Warriors or Hyrule Warriors kind of story where it's all like, you know, complete BS.
Yeah.
They're trying to do something like real, and I'm wondering how they're kind of integrate that into the story in a way that makes like actual sense and not just we portaled here because we can, screw you.
Yeah. We'll see. We will see on that. Super Chris, I'd love Rhythm Heaven. Rhythm Heaven would be cool to see. I'd like to see another one of those. Kutano Tatsu, Splatoon 3 was announced in February last year. Yeah, I mean, Nintendo hasn't done too much to sort of outline what's to come next year yet, beyond just Breath of the Wild 2. So maybe this Direct will start to give us more insight on that beyond just Breath of the Wild 2. It could be one more game, it could be a couple more games. So we'll see. Ubicore, I would love to see a smaller B team within Monolith Soft do a turn-based RPG because they know how to make them. You know, given from what we're seeing of Scarlet and Violet, I wouldn't be shocked if they have a hand in the production of the world in Scarlet and Violet. Now, I know it's not exactly what you're getting at. Like, you would like to just see a smaller thing from them. We haven't seen Monolith Soft do anything much. Like, they've done a lot, but it's mostly been supporting other Nintendo studios on the back end and Xenoblade. We haven't seen them do something outside of helping out other Nintendo studios and Xenoblade. So I would kind of like to see that. I think they could do something more than that, though.
They have that new IP, but it's probably going to be just as big a project as Xenoblade is.
Or bigger. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 might be the climax to the Xenoblade story. They might move on from Xenoblade after this. I don't know if they should.
I wouldn't be surprised if they revisited an X-like formula with an MMO.
Yeah, I think Xenoblade should probably stick around, like the name. But they could maybe, call it X, or instead of having Chronicles, it could be, there could be something to sort of like differentiate it. But I think the Xenoblade name, it has some level of brand popularity. Like, I think, it would be beneficial to them to sort of build on that. If it's going to be something that's like Xenoblade, right? If it's going to be something entirely different, then, it's something entirely different.
I do think keeping the Xeno is definitely going to happen just because they've always done that.
Yeah.
But the Blade part, they may or may not drop that.
Well, as long as they've been with Nintendo, it's been Xenoblade.
Yeah. Before they had Xenogears and Xenosaga.
Yeah, and there was an in-between where I think Nintendo kind of partially owned them, and they had Baten Kaitos. Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, they were on the GameCube. They were cool RPGs.
Famously not Xeno named.
Yeah, but then they moved on.
I wonder if it wasn't the same director.
I have to look into that, I'm not sure.
Because I'm pretty sure it's the main creative head of the Xenoblade team who likes naming things Xeno. So he might just not have worked on Baten Kaitos, I don't know.
I don't know, like I said, I have to look into that there. Okay. Yeah, I was just looking up if there's any weird announcements from Nintendo. Alright, well, I think we've pretty much figured everything out here. Divas brought up Xenoblade Warriors game, wink wink, nudge nudge. Yeah, Xenoblade Warriors would be pretty good, for sure. Joy CJ, what if we actually got good DLC for Age of Calamity? It's a Zelda thing for this year. Well, we just got Age of Calamity DLC, and I don't know if DLC for a game that already got DLC that's a spin-off that came out a couple years ago is significant enough. Might I remind people that there was this widespread belief back in 2020 that the physical release of an indie game that came out the year before that was getting some DLC that was using the Zelda brand, Cadence of Hyrule, people believe that was the Zelda content for the year. No. The Zelda content for the year was actually Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. There's a substantial difference there, right? So I don't think DLC on
Into Hyrule is great, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. But, like, the second wave of DLC to a game that's already kind of, like, ran its course, I don't think that's it.
It doesn't make sense for a new release.
Yeah. I mean, heck, even last year, when we had DLC for Age of Calamity that was more fresh and significant because of its recency and release timing, we still had Skyward Sword HD. So, you know, I don't think another wave in the second year afterwards is enough. I think it's got to be something else. So
I think it has to actually be a new release.
I mean, now if it's a significant sort of thing where it's like its own physical thing, like it's like a Torna kind of deal. Maybe you could argue that, especially with Breath of the Wild 2 coming out in spring.
Game.
Yeah, if it's something like that, then maybe. But I don't see that happening. It would have to be at that point. It wouldn't even be Age of Calamity. You might as well just make another Warriors game based off the Zelda series. So you know, we'll see. But I definitely think probably something else. Anyways, I think pretty much done here. Colin Perkins did bring this up in relation to the other IP for Monolith Soft. They said, I wonder if Monolith's new IP from years ago will ever be released. Xenoblade 3 might get DLC next year, and then potentially Xenoblade X, so not sure how many years for that. Well, I mean, there's no guarantee Xenoblade X follows that, so...
Yeah, there really isn't.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that Xenoblade X will ever get ported to the Switch. Hopefully, though. But they've been working on the game. I think we saw back in 2018, right? Is when they started working on it? Or maybe even before. I think it was 20... Yeah, I think like August 2018.
I know we've seen listings...
We first saw the concept art.
I don't remember. There was listings in 2017, and there were listings in 2019. I mean, they're pretty much hiring every year.
Right. But like, I'm trying to remember when we
Davis
saw
is saying
the
2017.
Concept art for the game. Was it 2017? It might have been. I remember it being earlier than I thought, and I remember it being 2018, so it was probably 2017.
Sometimes I look at videos we've talked about or made just to kind of chronicle like what has happened in terms of what we were thinking and talking about that time. Granted, in order for me to look then, I would have to kind of go pretty far back. Because I know for a fact there's some podcasts that literally had the concept arts like literally like as a thumbnail. So I'm like thinking about going back now. If I check the live stuff, that actually might get through pretty quick. So let's see. I'm scanning through. All right, so I'm already back into 2021. It was definitely wasn't 2021.
By next year, it will be about 5 or 6 years since they said they were starting to work on the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out within the next.
Watch it be a huge open world MMO.
Ooh.
And that's what pushes them.
But it definitely seems like a huge project for them because they. Well, it hasn't come out yet, and it's been at least 5 years.
Yeah, I've already backtracked to 2020, looking through like our different podcasts. I haven't seen that thumbnail yet.
Or at least 4 years.
If you're right about it, 2017, we'll see it soon.
2017 will be 5 years. It would be about 5 years. 2018 then is about 4 years.
Isn't it weird to think about that? I would remember
either way,
what thumbnail
like a year or two
I would have used. I mean, I know. I mean, I remember making each of these thumbnails.
I'm pretty sure I can see the thumbnail. Like I remember what you did for it.
It wasn't complicated. It was literally just a concept art and then just like the number of the show.
Yeah, the number on the top right.
Oh, this one had backtracked quite a bit.
I think it was like number 160. No, couldn't have been that high.
What are we on? Unless I accidentally missed it, we're in the early 200s. Okay, so I see a podcast where I see a concept art with one that looks like Zelda from 2019. But that's not the one I was thinking about, so I'm thinking about maybe it was further back, or maybe I used it for a video instead. I'm talking about the one where it was like it was like very grassy. The one that looked almost Dark Souls like.
The one with the dragon?
I don't know if there was an actual dragon. It was a dude in armor.
There was a woman in armor, and there was a dragon in the background.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that one we did a podcast. It was featured in a thumbnails of ours in 2019 in April. Okay, so it was definitely.
I think it was downstairs. I think
we had
known
a
about it by
podcast
then,
talking about it in
for sure,
2019.
before then.
That's just when we saw concept art. But that's not videos. I bet there's a video I have somewhere. I remember now. It's coming back to me now. The more I think about
Pretty sure it was at least 2018.
So I remember, we tried a little for a bit, like doing little clips of the podcast, and it was one of those clips where I used that thumbnail that I'm referring to. Yeah, and it wouldn't be surprised if it was a clip of that same one from April 2019. Again, I'm not sure if that's the one that originally came out. I'm gonna look at that.
I remember the news dropping in like.
Well, there were multiple hirings. I'll tell you that one podcast was talking about Monolith Soft developing a new Zelda.
Okay, then we had already heard about it because
the new IP
seen it for months before you came up with the idea that it was for Zelda.
Okay,
I think.
I mean, if I just Google this, it'll be probably a lot quicker. A lot quicker. Yeah. So that's what I'm gonna do.
It would.
All right, so Monolith Soft. I can't spell anymore. That's because I'm done. I'm done for the day. I'm tired. Monolith Soft developing new IP.
And just look for the oldest article, I guess. Look up the concept art.
Alright, so you guys know Stealth, right? Stealth,
yeah.
We've had him on the podcast before. We follow each other on Twitter. I'm seeing here he tweeted about both projects in 2018. Just go to Monolith Soft's website. It might be on their website. Although they might be kind of hard pushing Xenoblade 3 right now.
Yeah, it's also all in Japanese.
Yeah,
you can get Google to translate it, but none of the.
Anyways, he tweeted about
printed text.
Both projects and it was in 2018. So, I mean, anyway, it's been years. Is the main point to be made here.
Yeah.
Right. Even if it's 2019, like it's been a while, but it's clearly been before that. Mm-hmm. Clearly, at least 2018, and maybe 2017 to your point. So, like, it's been a while.
I'm pretty sure it was like.
Just for the record, if this was a dedicated video, I would have like done the research before, and I've done the research beforehand. I've talked about it before in multiple videos. I just don't remember. Yeah, I used to know. I just trying to figure it out now.
It hasn't come up in a while.
Yeah.
Xenoblade 3, you know.
I am on their website right now. Okay. I don't know if this will help. They do have a lot of.
They should still have
here.
Like the 3.
I'm gonna screen share.
If they haven't changed their site, it should still be like the 3.
Yep, it is.
Categories.
I'm gonna screen share real quick, and then we'll call it a night after this. I don't know why it says Pokemon, but hopefully there we go. So, this is Monolith Soft's website.
I remember we were speculating back in the day that it might be
this
an
one
MMO
right here,
because the job reading had a lot of online related
This
things.
one right here is related to the IP. This is in Japanese, so it's kind of, I can't really. This is the art I was talking about, though, right here. And if you look carefully, it's actually Triforces. And this looks similar to the god statue.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. The one in front of the building, with the stairs.
Yeah. It's like a very.
I can't see what you're saying, so I'm just assuming what you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't know when this started, but they've been. The fact this is still up.
They're still working on it.
Still working on it. Yeah.
So. It's coming eventually.
And it's very Zelda-esque because you do have a Zelda-like warrior with. I've seen the top of this art does have that red dragon. It's coming back to me. And there's this art that has like Triforces in the background with the goddess-like statue. Very Zelda, Dark Souls like.
Definitely Zelda inspired.
Yeah.
At the very least. I wouldn't be surprised. It does seem like this. I mean, considering we haven't seen it yet. Or anything of it, I would imagine that the concept art they showed off was very early.
Oh yeah.
So it might have just been that their first inspiration was Zelda, so that's why the concept art has a lot of Zelda tones.
Meanwhile,
they'll change it to something different.
Yeah, I mean, Monolith Soft does help with Zelda. Like, that's no surprise. That's part of what they do.
Yeah. It's one of their biggest roles.
Such a nice website. Anyway, they've been working on it for a handful of years. That much I can say with confidence. So, yeah.
Hopefully we'll see it soon, within the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Let me see if that's it for now. Yep. Yeah, the concept art was pretty nice. Anyways, guys, that is all for now. I bid you all a good night or good morning or good afternoon whenever you're watching this. Please make sure to like the stream to be very helpful for us. And we'll see you soon. There will be videos coming throughout the week, hopefully, probably. I'm pretty certain of that. And maybe we get news on a Nintendo Direct soon. Even if it doesn't happen this week.
Hopefully.
At least based off the rumor, we don't have to wait that long. So, we shall see.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Alright, take care, guys. Bye.
Bye, guys.